What's up? What's up? What's going on, everybody? How you guys doing out there? Hey, what is going on? This is Solar Gray, the Cinematic Sorcerer, and I am coming at you from the Wizard's Tower. And welcome. What's happening to my hand? I'm coming at you from the Wizard's Tower, and welcome to the dark side of the room. So yes, here I am. This is me. This is us. This is what we are doing. And what is up with that? Okay. Yep. Oh, I may have to change my framing. I'm like, have you any idea how you were framing back there? Oh my God, look at all that. That's better. That's, whoa, huh? Yeah, that is being a little weird. Let me just get in here real quick. Yeah, that is weird and fascinating. And let me just, oh, that's why. That is most definitely a thing. It looks like I've got some adjustments to do with my camera. So I'm just like, why is my hand being cut off so hard so quickly? So let me just get at this real quick. In the meantime, feel free to send me an email over at the following places. Alright, and the following places being back in the deck at gmail.com. That's BACKINTHEDECK at gmail.com. All right. And of course, you got the Twitter, Instagram, and all of that jazz. So yeah, this is definitely a thing. All right. So let's see who we got here. Oh, what is going on, everybody? Okay, look at this. I'm back. I'm like, I was going into a different dimension, and I hate when that happens. So we have some fun stuff to talk about today. So let me just get all of this other stuff out of the way. Oh, I seem really low. You mean my volume, but that's okay. I have turned everything up, and isn't that fun? All right. So, as I was saying, ooh, wow, look at all that stuff. Excuse me. All right. So, welcome to the dark side of the room, and today we are going to be talking about fun stuff having to do with character, i.e. character track, character goals, where do we see our character in 5 years, type of things that are out there. Because, how can I put this? Well, a lot of people have an idea of where their character wants to go, and a lot of preconceived ideas. So we're going to be tackling those like we do every single show. However, we've also got a few other things that we need to be discussing, like subscription. Subscribe to the channel, y'all. But how do you do so? Well, you can talk to me right here. Hey, look at that right there in the chat. And of course, you can subscribe here on Twitch. Just become a tier 1 subscriber. If you've got an Amazon Prime account, use that. Won't cost you nothing, and it'll help get me paid over here so we can keep paying for all this stuff, like the internet and upkeeping of the gear. If you guys remember last week, one of my hard drives took a dive 2 weeks ago today, as a matter of fact, on a Tuesday at about this part in the stream, and it was because of our subscribers and our patrons was I able to get back up and running by Friday. So thank you guys, and let's just keep on going with that. You can also, if you so desire, reach out to us over here on the Discord server. What? Yeah, we got a Discord server where you guys can talk to us all the time, and I am a big fan of the Discord server because, it gives me a chance to talk to you guys. Like when I'm not here live, we're all there right there. Yeah, that link should be working. So we got that going, and let me put this up in the YouTubes. And of course, now while we're doing this intro and all that stuff, if you guys will contact somebody that say, hey, check this thing out. We're doing not quite a character study, but how to set up a character study. And this stuff will actually help you when you're watching regular media and all that jazz too. There's so many uses for this stuff, because we might be talking about games, but we're really talking about life, the universe. Do you know anything about life, Lisa? Do you know what do you know about life? And of course, I switched up a whole lot of stuff going on over here. But yeah, so here we are with our Discord server, saying what's up to the people, fielding questions, things like that. You can always get a hold of me on there. And of course, if you want to help us out, we have a little button. And in that little button allows you, the person who pushes the little button, to head on over to our donation page, which definitely helps. If you only want to do a one-time donation, then you can do that. But there's also another little button that says Patreon, right? And that Patreon button will take you all the way over to our Patreon at patreon.com/BID_P, and you can become a decker. And with that, I mean, we put up content. We're doing a whole bunch of this stuff all the time. We got our free shows, our other unlocked content, and all that stuff that we have up there. I do a lot of Patreon exclusive stuff, and a lot of or at least I'm doing that now, Patreon exclusive and early access to the stuff over on our YouTube channel. So honestly, I think that's worth a lot. Also, you can as well, if you're interested, because it's summer, and you know what, summer has one major thing that comes out, and that is it's hot. Summer is so hot. And you know what helps with the heat coming from the guy that wears turtlenecks to every single show is t-shirts. Yeah, that's right. How would you guys like to pick up Back in the Deck t-shirts? We've got Lil Saul right here in t-shirt form. This is actually my favorite one, but yeah, you can get them in a whole bunch of different colors, male fit, female fit, all that jazz, along with the Back in the Deck logo, because we are a real company. Look at that. Hey, you want to spot your colors? That's what we can do. And of course, I'm going to show you guys my two favorite pieces of merch that we got out there, being the Back in the Deck coffee mug. Gee, I can't imagine why I love the Back in the Deck coffee mug. And of course, the notebooks, because I am a list maker by design. All right, this is what I do. I'm a list maker. I make lists, and I'm also a GM. And that being said, with being a GM, we have to keep notes and all that stuff. So we're here. All right, so now that we've got that going, let's get into today's topics. All right, now a lot of you guys are out there doing the thing, right? You're doing the thing, and that's right, clever little vixen. Before we get into the thing, I have to give my shout outs to my patrons. All right, and my patrons are listed here. We're talking Laura Holton, Shaylee Watson, Jennifer Kroll, Noah Olheiler, Glenn Couts, Christopher Chalmers, Joseph Hines. These are my deckers on the royalty tier. That is $20 a month or more, and that helps us with our community outreach stuff. Setting up after school programs so that kids that don't have anywhere to go can learn D&D, read comic books, learn role playing, do tabletop miniature painting, learn art, all that other stuff. Since, let's face it, teachers have a hard enough workload. And since I'm a dude in the community, I figured I would commune with the people that are here that need something to do outside of school that will pique their interest in life, the universe, and doing things. Not to mention spending time with other people. So I'm a really big fan. So now that we've got all that stuff, I want to talk to you like real talk, to you guys about characters. Okay. Now anybody that's ever played a tabletop RPG, all right, knows you create characters. Anybody that has played video games knows that you create characters. This is what we do. All right. But as you guys know, I run a lot of games. Okay. I run a lot of games. I talk to a lot of people. I like running one shots, but most of the time, one shots turn into campaigns if I'm doing my job right, because my players are like, this is fun, let's keep going. And I'm like, okay, well, let's make another character so we can do a campaign. No, I don't want to make another character. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours on this, and I'm emotionally invested. Okay, cool, we definitely get that. But here's the thing with characters. A lot of the times people get an emotional investment into their character and don't really think the character through over the long term of playing it. What does that mean? Like, what are you talking about, you crazy old man? That's, I don't get you. I don't get you. I'm like, all right, cool. Just give me a sec. I explain. When a person creates a character for a role-playing game, they are creating a character for a story, okay? But most of the time, especially since we live life in the 21st century, we tend to focus on that which is in front of us, all right? This is my character. This is what they can do. I have an elven archer, and I want to make sure that they can shoot a lot, right? And then the stories come up, and sometimes there's not room to shoot all the time. And then people start going, well, I didn't make my character very balanced. And then they get discouraged. And they either quit playing the game, or they lose heart. They stop having fun. And there's a solution to this, all right? And this is something that comes down with book writing as well. And this is, of course, having a concept for your character beyond game mechanics. And second, not being locked in to a surface idea of what a character is. A lot of people think about stuff like character growth from the standpoint of watching a story, okay? What did the character learn? Let's take Black Panther. Black Panther and Captain America, both supposedly ideal beings, right? So how do they grow as characters over the course of their movies? Well, in the first one, in the first Captain America, First Avenger, Steve grew physically, and he saved the day. So how did he character? Honestly, he got the power to put into effect, and he had to weigh. He had a choice to make between being corrupted by the power that he had, or sticking to his guns, looking at the world and saying, no, you move, doing the right, even though doing the right thing to him would probably get killed. And that is awesome. The willingness to martyr is always a great thing to have in character. That doesn't mean a character has eagerness to martyr. We'll get to that later. All right. And when we look at Black Panther grows as a character by seeing the point of Killmonger and seeing how what he has, well, seeing the point of Killmonger and Nakia, and looking at how what Wakanda has helped the world as a whole, instead of sitting on top of their treasures and being afraid that if they share, other people take everything. What's going on, sad, strange little man? We're talking about character arcs, or more to the point, character planning, or character path. Now, let's talk about video games, just a second. Now, y'all know I don't play a lot of video games, but there was a time that I did. And when we have a character in a video game role playing, we do a lot of character planning that we don't tend to take to the table with our tabletop RPG, or to our creative writing, be it your fanfic, your stuff you do for school, whatever it is that you're creating. What we tend to have at the table is an idea of where they're going to be when they hit epic level and where they are now. But the path to get there, we don't exactly put a lot of thought into. And because of the world that we live in, it's not really something that we think about thinking about. Okay? When you have your character in a video game, though, you can see, hey, I want this spell. This is what I have to do to get it. I'll go out and I'll grind in the forest to get the XP to raise this stat to this high so that I can use this particular sword. Or I need these kinds of stats so I have access to this level. You guys see what I'm talking about. I don't care if you're playing Mass Effect, Dragonborn, Elder Ring, whatever video game you're playing, Minecraft, all right? And this is where we can learn a lot from that, because everything that we try and build, be it a shelf, a character, ourselves, a house, all has prerequisites, i.e., this has to happen before we get this result, right? And what we tend to forget when we're at the role-playing game table, especially new players, is to think ahead a little bit to where we want our character to be. Now, when we map character paths in, say, D&D or Pathfinder or whatever, of course, we automatically think of level 20, right? But when we look at the paths to improve, let's take Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for an example, just a small example, okay? What do we have there? Well, there we have, if you're this character class, this is the thing you get at these spell slots, you get these additional spells, you get these abilities, all that stuff, right? But we really don't look at it, consider it for the levels that we're going to, nor do we think about how we can use that we are, right? A lot of this, a lot to do with focus on what we think. Example, if you are getting into this because of YouTube, then you will see 1,000 videos about making your character better in combat. Okay? Spell slot economy, action economy. Well, this spell does this in combat, but this spell does it better in combat. I always have a fear about that in the course of playing a game, because it tends to funnel people into playing the same type of character in every game with every character. Okay? There are certain gimmies. Every Magic user needs. That's right, I'm eating here. I'm checking out a new product here. I'm like mochi donuts. Anyway, yeah, every character who uses magic needs a damage cantrip, right? Just a weapon they can use anytime. I'm looking at you, Warlock. Eldritch Blast. Eldritch Blast. I don't care what YouTube video you look at. If someone's playing a Warlock, that is what they're going to be talking about, okay? You get Eldritch Blast. But most of the videos, when they talk about optimization, and we talked about this in a previous video, check out the archives and you'll see it, about optimizations of characters, okay? When we go for optimum, we only focus on the character path to lead us to the optimum, which means we end up playing the same character over and over and over and over. We might think that there's flavor, but we do the same stuff under the same circumstances over and over. And that tends to lead us to getting bored. Most of the time, we get bored pretty quickly. Make no mistake, as you guys know, in D&D, I love playing wizards. And yeah, I do take either Mage Hand or Prestidigitation. And I also take Firebolt because, yeah, you do need a damage cantrip. But when I think about my wizard from the top, I ask, what kind of wizard am I taking? What is their story? And when it goes across, when it comes to looking at their story, excuse me, that determines the path that they're going to take. And this is important because when you predetermine a path for your character, that means they're not going to be optimized at all times. When I read a bunch of stories, like as you guys know, I love wizards, I love magic using, I love all that stuff. There's a series of books out, you guys may have heard of them, called The Dresden Files. Now, Harry is an invocation wizard. He is good at throwing fire and ice. He is that guy. But he's not very great on turning invisible or doing subtle things. Okay, he is everything is a nail and I am a hammer. And when it comes to doing things like using the spell that makes a broom fly, he's good at blasting stuff, but he never thought of using that spell on something that wasn't a broom. That kind of. But he is on the path. Oh man. Well, good luck with the doctor's appointment, bro. So when Jim Butcher was planning him out, he has a specific path for Harry to take. And when you are playing a game and you have your character, it's easy to think about, when I get to level 20, I'll be doing everything. I'll have everything done. Great, perfect, bah. There's nothing I won't be able to do. Unfortunately, and I can tell you this from decades of reading and writing and playing games. Oh man. I'm a mess today, aren't I? If you try and become great at everything, you'll be mediocre at most things and terrible at the rest. Now, I'm not saying pick a character path and stick to it. That is not the whole thing. But have an idea of what your character might want to do in the long term. There's an anime out there that I don't know anybody that hasn't heard of it, called One Piece. And the main character wants to be king of the pirates because he yells everything all the time. Like being with a Spielbergian 10-year-old. But you know, yeah, you're right, Daryl. He can't do earth magic that well either. But he's good at evocation. All right, he's really good at evocation. This is one of the reasons where games like Dungeons and Dragons have subclasses. Okay, but having a character path, with the king of the pirates, I'm gonna be the best of this class, like there never was. Like I was talking to my players last night about, I kind of want to play a shadow sorcerer. However, I have an idea. I just have an idea that this shadow sorcerer isn't gonna be, look at me, I'm edgy, we there in the darkness. There's a character from DC Comics, specifically Starman in the late 90s, called the Shade. And that incantation, or that incarnation of the Shade, was a Victorian libertine dandy who was friends with Oscar Wilde. And I'm like, I love this guy. And he did shadow magic. He traveled through darkness. He made constructs. He did a whole bunch of stuff. And he stole things that he either wanted to collect or he stole things for money. And that was the extent of his evil. And in the town that he lived in, he liked it, and he's one of the protectors of that town. But when he leaves that town, it's to do crime. I'm like, dude, I like this dude. Now, does his magic, or does his shadowmancy revolve around being the best and being the most evil. I shall cast the world in darkness. No, he's not that strong. What did I think of him in Stargirl? From what I saw of him in Stargirl, I liked him a lot. However, the second season of Stargirl got really annoying to me and I had to stop watching it. I just couldn't do it anymore. So, but yeah, I do love the shade, and that's the guy I'm talking about. And, you know, he's a shadow sorcerer in D&D, and I like the idea. And so the fact of the matter is that's a character path that I can put him on. But those paths that I'm talking about has a lot more to do with who the character is as a whole instead of what makes them special. Okay? I.e., who is their character overall versus what they're like in combat. Okay? I watch a lot of YouTube channels as well. One of my favorites is Seth Skorkowski. He's a GM out of Dallas, Texas, and he's brilliant. In one of his stories, he was talking about how he had a barbarian that destroyed magical artifacts because barbarians don't like magic. And he went to the town's blacksmith to tear apart a magical shield. And you know, he taught the blacksmith to scream out that it is an offering to Thor the entire time. So the blacksmith is like, "For Thor!" Clang! And he, you know, back out of here, it's like, "For," you know, you know, just that whole thing of "For Thor! For Thor!" And eventually that blacksmith became a cleric of Thor. Now, was this anything having to do with combat? No. But the barbarian he had was on a very cool character path of not liking magic, even if the magical artifacts would help him in combat, but he don't like magical artifacts, so he's not going to take the magical artifacts of the rest of the party. But when they're divvying up rewards and he gets a magical artifact, he's going to break it, you know? But he ended up learning a little bit of smithing from that. And does it help him in combat? No. Okay, but it's all part of his character path. He destroys magical weapons, so he has to know a little bit of blacksmithing. And this, in and of itself, is a good way to think about your characters. Now, when you're thinking about your characters' magic stuff, the things they can do in combat or not do in combat, there's also, much like in, say, Diablo 2, there is a path that you can take with your characters. And I don't care what game we're talking about, okay? If you make, say, an investigative journalist for Call of Cthulhu, there are so many ways to spend your character points. But the really big thing is making sure that you spend your character points in some part, just some part, in advancing your character down the path. Ask yourself, does what I want to do with this character fit with how I envision them when they're maxed out? Okay? Now, like I said, we talk about a lot of stuff on this channel, but this is something that I live by. All right, guys? I have an idea of who I want to be, not just when I grow up, okay, because sadly I am grown. But when I advance, become the person that I'm meant to be, I have an idea of who that is, what he's like, how he deals with frustration and that. But since life doesn't come with level ups, I have to ask myself all the time, is this representative of the me that I want to be? All right? Is the yelling and screaming and throwing furniture that I want to do when I'm on hold with a company that wants to take my money, is that me? Is that who I am? Is that who I want to be? Like, it might be who I am at that moment, but is that a representative of the person that I would present to myself and be proud of? And this is where we get on character path, guys. You know, who do I think this character is? You're making a dark and evil overlord. or someone that wants to be a deep dark overlord, um, then you can have your actions show that in game. Understand the rest of the party may have something to do with that, but you can show that in game. But when most people do this, they get the idea of a deep dark overlord is obeyed. And if they're not obeyed, then they go executioner style. And I'm like, well, good job, Joffrey Baratheon. So if execution isn't on the docket and they're not obeying, how does that person address this issue? You know, do they go more subtle? Do they go off in a huff and stomp, stomp, stomp? Do they start collecting things like cows and mutant bats in the bat cave because they can't be like their dad? Who are they? All right. And this is something that I urge everyone to think about when it comes to creating characters, either for role playing games or their creative writing, or even if you're submitting something to be a writer for a magazine or something. Who is that person once they succeed? Who is that person once they fail? What do these people need to accomplish the next thing that they want? You know? Now, with a lot of things, this is easy. All right? Like really, really easy in a lot of places. Like when you're trying to determine magical path in a game like Dungeons and Dragons. Let's say you want to be an ice wizard. Well, you can take the path of evocation. You can focus on cold and make all of your spells freezing spells and hold persons and things like that. And it's pretty apparent, especially for the elements like ice, fire, electricity, gravity, things like that. But let's say you create a thief character. Well, are they a jewel thief? How much geology do they know? Do they have a certain amount of survival that they have to get when they're cave delving? Are they dungeoneers? You know, do they have merchant skills to appraise things like jewels? Okay, these are the things that add depth to our character whenever we are creating them. And this is something that I always encourage my players to think about, not just before a game, but during game as well. Excuse me. You know, there is nothing wrong with spending your character points or your level ups or your upgrades on things not having to do with what their job is. It's fine for a paladin to study calligraphy or to learn a little bit about armoring, or heck, to even learn how to juggle. Because when we're making these characters for these games or for these stories, they interact with other people. Now, there is a very chilling statement that's made in business, which is the 3 people that you spend the most time with are the ones that will determine the course of your life. And that is because as social creatures, human beings or human-like beings are interactive. And part of interacting with people is you give a little of yourself to them, they give a little bit of them to you. So we're constantly evolving. We're constantly changing. Okay? We're changing perspectives, we're changing skill sets, interests, all of those things. Okay? So when you're in a game like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or Call of Cthulhu or anything that requires interacting with other people, you're going to learn stuff from them and they're going to learn stuff from you. And it's perfectly fine to reflect that in your character's growth. Okay? I think back to Hercules, The Legendary Adventures with Kevin Sorbo, done by Sam Raimi back then. And I remember, I think it was season 3, the Aeolus character left at the end of season 2, came back at the beginning of season 3, and he had spent some time in Asia and learned some kung fu. And he's like, look, I learned some kung fu. And Hercules is, I punch it, it goes flying. Aeolus is like, I'm not as strong as you. but I can hit a lot. I can do joint locks. I can trip. This is all fun stuff. And it differentiated them as characters, and it was pretty awesome. And these are the things that we can all bring to the table, not just at the beginning of our group session, but throughout the entirety of the interactions. You know, I know that we all have a lot to learn from each other, and we all have a lot to show each other. So when you're creating your characters, keep that in mind and think about the path that your character is on and how to accomplish the paths that you'd like them to be on. Okay? Now, second part of today's show. I wanted to talk, and I put this out on the announcement, I wanted to talk to you guys about flavor and description. This weekend, as you guys know, I had a lot of conversations with my players. Okay? Trying to keep things organized, and it's the beginning of the month and all that jazz. And one of them was like, well, this character is creating their own spells. I want to bring some of the stuff from the FGC into game. I'm like, FGC? And he's like, the fighting game communities. I want to do like Harukins and all that stuff. And I'm like, dude, you're a 5th level paladin. You already can. What you're doing, right now is you're telling me that you want to give more descriptions to your attacks, talking about your body positioning and how you're going to do it, you know? So you want to take stuff from the fighting game thing. Remember that you're a paladin type character. So whatever attacks you do, as long as they're with your swords, you can color them up all you want. If you want to do the tiger uppercut from Sagat with your sword, all you have to do is describe to me what you're doing. And this is what I wanted to get into today. Okay, because there's a lot of thoughts on what is the term? Descriptions, and a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to playing a lot of games. Okay? Oh, thank you, Alphatagan. You kick the rat in the head hard, causing its head to crumple inwards like a wet paper bag. That is definitely a GM thing. But this is players I want to talk to. Okay? You see, a lot of new players get caught up in I guess you can say the 21st century problem of abbreviated speech, okay? Such as, you guys are surrounded by goblins. You can hear the tensions on their bows as they creak. And one of them looks at the fighter with an angry look on their face, communicating that he is the one that will die first. You've rolled initiative, but the fighter goes first. What does the fighter do? I hit it with my sword. Okay, roll an attack. Yeah, I hit it with my sword. It's like, okay, anything else? No, hitting it with my sword is good. Versus, you've rolled initiative. What does the fighter do? I take my sword and I charge him. And using an underhanded strike, I place my sword between his legs and I say, "Ha, Hugan!" Roll your dice. Now, both of them are, I hit it with my sword. But which one sounds more fun to you? Now, if the first one is, I hit it with my sword, that sounds fun enough. That's cool. If that is your jam, that is your jam. But if you say I hit it with my sword because you're a newer player and you don't know that the door is open for flowery and descriptive language of your own, I'm here to let you know that the door is open, as a matter of fact. A good amount of playing these games are those descriptions, and they don't have to be competitive. You don't have to be more descriptive or more poetic than the GM. This is a trading of styles, you know? We had a moment in C24 last night where I was describing how to how to walk through a swamp. And one of my players said, "Oh God, no, wet sand on socks. That's just not cool." And I'm like, more like socks in cold oatmeal, just with every step. And they're like, oh God, yeah. And that gives a more visceral reaction, a more immersive experience than you guys are slogging through the muck. That's what you guys are doing. You're slogging through the muck versus with every single step you can feel your legs strain like a vacuum effect trying to pull your foot into the ground as though the swamp itself doesn't want to let go of its embrace around your ankle, you know? Let's see, we got Offatagan saying the player? Let's see. Korax will strum on his lute, creating a powerful riff that summons the flames of the underworld to forcefully slam into the target. Eldritch Blast. Yes! That's what I'm talking about. You know, that right there, that is exactly it, you know? I strum on my thing, summoning the fires from the underworld. And I say, yeah! You know, I know it sounds silly and all that stuff, but using these descriptions, and coming up with that language, I have not seen a single player not have fun with this as long as they didn't feel pressured to do so, you know? Yeah, seriously. Now I'm glad you brought that up, Offatagan. On a critical, the spools of the dead screech as the line of underworld fire forms into a screaming skull on its tip. I'm like, yeah, I love that. Now, I do not quite trick, but I encourage my players to describe to me what happens. You know? Yeah, I mean, seriously. I discourage the souls, thank you. Yeah, I always encourage my players to tell me how their spells manifest, how their effect will look to the other players. Not to mention what happens on a critical roll, or and I mean a critical success or a critical failure. Let's see, we got Neon Arlecchino saying Smite just feels wrong if the verbal component isn't whoa, living on a prayer, you know? And this is what I do with a lot of my newer players to D&D. Now, there are a lot of games that give you bonuses for stuff like this. I know the 7th Sea system from Alderac Games from like 20 years ago was all about pirates buckling or swashing those buckles. So I stab him with my sword. Okay, roll 3d10 versus well, I see that there is a chandelier, so I swipe at him with a faint swipe, and then using that swipe, I grab onto the rope and I cut the rope. As the chandelier falls on top of them, it pulls me up to the top, and I look at them and say, "You'll have to be faster than that." Oh, well, dude, roll 7 dice. Like, roll 7d10. You know, I mean, that's what we're talking about. Because the game behind these games, all right, the actual thing, or one of the many games behind these games, isn't just, I have the numbers that make the bad things stop going. It's also having fun with words, all right? This is one of the reasons that I try so hard to bring people from my neck of the woods in, because we love ourselves some hip hop, and hip hop is all about poetry and prose. Like, let's use them words to get on in there. You know, Judge John is back. Let's see, we have always a good policy, makes it more immersive and the game more interactive. It also mitigates role playing and encourages, or mitigates role playing and encourages role playing. Yeah, thank you, Judge John. Now, real talk, because I'm all about transparency. I wish I'd come up with that myself, but that was a technique I got from watching Satine Phoenix as a GM. I'm like, this is great. They do the crit. They have to describe how things happen. And she just goes, it's a critical hit. What happens? You know? And of course, there's always the unspoken law of that critical hit may or may not kill the thing. The players don't know. Okay? But it's really a thing that's out there. But the interaction of the players with the actions that they're taking, the players with the actions of other people, all of that chat. This. No. You see, talent borrows. I'm a genius. I just steal. Anyway, but thank you. Yes, it's not plagiarism, it's research. But honestly, yeah, I love that technique for the immersion. And my players that have come across with critical roles in their games, not critical role trademark, copyright, RC, all that. When I have them describe what happens, a lot of the times they're like, oh, well, can it blah, 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 blah? I'm like, yes, that sounds good. And this brings me to what stops a lot of newer players from coming up with the flowery language and using stuff they've read in books before, which is permission. There is not a time in role-playing games with the majority of GMs, I'm going to say 60%, although I wish that number were higher, that a player does not have permission to speak on their turn. Okay? The number one question I get from new players is, well, can I? All right? Oh, yes. Speak to me, my turn. And make no mistake, I'll be real honest with you guys. I hate that question. I really do. I hate, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do this? I'm like, you're asking me permission to go and talk to the shopkeeper? I like to say what you're going to do. Make your intention a statement instead of an asking for permission. Because as we discussed yesterday in our episode on the relationship between GM and player, I am not your daddy. It is not a script that I write. You don't have to ask me for permission to do various things. You know? That's a good thing to say, Judge John, but a lot of players don't quite get that, and that type of thing does encourage them to interrupt other players' turns. Okay? But when it comes to small things, like, well, one of the biggest things I get from new players is, can I say blah, 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 blah? I'm like, does your character speak common? Well, yeah, then why can't they say those words? There are consequences for those words because you're interacting with another character, even if it's a non-player character, but you can say whatever you want, you know? This is where I love the Disney franchise of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Rocket does things. Hey, anybody want some batteries? You know? And these are the things that create plot, which creates game, which creates fun. Okay? But describing what you do. Of course there are limits. So let's talk about those. I always encourage my players to describe what they're going to do within the stance of about 3 seconds. Okay? If it takes more than 3 seconds to say it, you're going a little too deep. All right? We don't want the pendulum going all the way the other way. So, you know, the descriptions that were given by Alphatagan a little earlier in the chat are glorious. They are great. You know, it's all right. Well, it's my turn. Yes. I'm going to strum my guitar to play blah, 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 blah. And this is what it will look like to everyone else. And I'm going, yeah, that's great. That's great. Now, it doesn't have to be, and then the fires from the underworld come about and they form themselves into a shape, and that shape then turns into three things that all form microphones, and then the microphones that they grab, they'll start singing do, 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 and I play my guitar, and then they sing the whole song. That's a little far. Okay, that's a little far. Awesome, but far. I tend to try and limit my players to do that once per game, you know, just once per game. And I mean like one player once per game, you know. But to say I strum my guitar and fires from the underworld come up, or I charge the guy with my move action, and then I take my sword and I focus the chi from within me that I have learned, or I focus my faith, and I say the words Soryuken, smiting him with the powers of what I've dedicated my life to. You go, Paladin, yeah, you do that thing. Oh, well, you see, I melt from within the shadows, looking for the chink in his armor, and I place my blade within the chink between the bottom of his armor and the top of his pants, and I push my sword through. Okay, roll your attack and do your backstabbing damage and let me know what it's like. That is what we're talking about. You know, that's the stuff that makes the games entertaining and engaging, you know? And that's the thing. When you guys are at the table, everyone can do that on their turn. When they describe what they're going to do, everyone can, you know. And this is something that I highly encourage people to think about, because I'm not just saying this is how to play D&D, because you know that's not what we're here for. This is a method, and this is one that I've come to find is very, very fun over time, you know. When you have your people going, yes, I don't just jump over the abyss. You know, I gauge the distance and I make sure that my running form is that of old, and I remember the names of my father, and I run feeling the wind of nature go past my pointed elven ears, and I leap with all alacrity, you know. And it's like, yeah, man, yeah, let's do that whole thing, you know. And don't get me wrong, there is kind of a downside, but I don't think it's a downside. I think it's an awesome side, which is you do all those descriptions before you roll the dice, and then you fail. But that leaves it on to the GM to pick up the baton from that flowery and fun language to use similar language to describe how it didn't work, you know, such as you're leaping through the air, listening to the names of your father or of your forefathers, and listening to the colors of the wind. And as you notice the distance is further than you calculated, you grab for the edge of the cliff, and you can hear your forefathers' collective palms hitting their foreheads and shaking their heads in disappointment. But one day you will prove them, or you will prove to them, that you are worthy of the name of Wind Rider. You know, you see what I mean? Oh, and now make an athletics check. You know, I mean, that is the kind of thing that we can do. And using descriptive prose, or even communicative poetry in our descriptions just drags immersion all the way in at the game table. Okay, so think about these things. Okay, today we talked quite a bit about character path. Okay, where do we want our character to be? If we see a spell or a magical weapon or something that happens 5 or 10 levels from where we are, incorporate that into your plot. You know, just incorporate that. I want to learn this spell. I'm looking for the components for the spell, or I know this spell, or I've heard of this spell, but I would like someone to teach it to me. I would like to find it. I need to find the wizard that has it in its book. You know, those are all plot points and side quests that can be rolled in if you have a clear picture of where your character goes. And when you have a table full of people that have a clear idea of where each of their characters' paths are, you guys can deliberate as a group to see how the group is going to support this character in that in fulfilling those goals or those desires or those places. And it happens as a group, and opposed to forgetting about your party because you have this thing to do, or trying to force the party to help you when there's something bigger on the line. See what I mean? The more information that we have on characters, the more collaboration that we can have. And if we use the descriptive prose and the poetic descriptions, then our game becomes much deeper on a level where if people were watching, they'd want to see us. They would want not just to see us play, but they'd want to be a lot more like us and play in that manner, because those are the things that people see are fun. And if you don't believe me, watch any 2 episodes of Critical Role. Okay, Matt Mercer himself is an amazing, like, he's a better writer than he is a voice actor, and he's an amazing voice actor. But people are engaged on his stuff because he understands how to use words and how to be descriptive of his place. And we have the same with everybody else at the table. They are all writers, so they use their words and their descriptions and all that stuff. If you don't think that you're a great writer, try. Just try. Come up with those things. They don't have to knock it out the park every time, you know. But if you choose between, I hit him with my sword, and I charge him and I jump into the air, and with all the strength that I have, I swing my sword at his head. One is more immersive than the other, you know. And the more descriptions that you have on your turn, the more you give the rest of the people at the table an understanding of spatial awareness, like where is everyone in relation to each other at the game, who's doing what with who, and how can I help, or where do I not run when I'm trying to make an escape. Okay, so I hope you guys got something out of today. I know I did. Major shout outs to a lot of the people that are here. I love having you here, Judge John. Come back more. Come back. I missed you. Well, let's see. Who else do we got in here? We got Clever Little Vixen holding down like gravity. Alpha Toggin, you know you're my dude. Alien Conglomeration, thank you for being here. Asuka Mikasa, thank you for being here. Commander Root, it's good to have you back. Danking Around, great. Neon Arlecchino, Sad Strange Little Man, Sony PlayStation, Super 8, Violet's TV, and Vixabel Cosplay, thank you guys for joining us on all of this. With Strands of Fate, I outright made a radar display for zones in my Cyberpunk game. Awesome! That is a really creative use of spells, and we're going to be talking about that on a little bit later day. Let's see. Yes, in black and white, now in color. I must drift to the land of Nod. Yeah, I'm with you. Nap would sound great. But with all that, I want to thank all you guys for showing up. This episode paid for by my subscribers and my patrons, being Laura Holden, Shaylee Watson, Jennifer Kroll, Noel Olheiler, Glenn Cowes, Christopher Chalmers, and Joseph Hines. Thank you guys for joining me today. Think about a lot of the stuff that we talked about and how it'll help you guys in your own writing and in your tabletop play. If you need some inspiration, check out comic books and novels. You know, look at what the narrator says, not just what the characters say, because I know for a long time I read books dialogue only, and then I do a second patch just reading the narration. Okay. But yeah, pay close attention to the narration bubbles in comic books and the narrative text in any of your favorite novels, and you'll see what I mean by that descriptive language. Okay. But with that, I gotta say, play games, have fun, do your writing, do your hobbies and stuff. And if anybody tells you you guys can't like what you like or can't have the hobbies you have because of the circumstances of your birth, be it your race, I didn't know black guys like D&D, your religion, isn't this like against the Quran? Your creed, here we go with all the insecurity. Your gender identity, what do you know about freaking Warhammer 40k? You're a girl, or your any circumstance of your birth, race, religion, creed, gender identity, sexual orientation, disabilities, or your budget. You just look at them and you tell them to take those cards and put them back in the deck. This is Solar Gray, the Cinematic Sorcerer, saying thank you guys for joining me, and we will see you tomorrow on the Dark Side of the Room.